I just played Pikmin 4 for the first time in 3 years, and it's time to look back at this absolute dumpster fire. Not only is this one of the worst games on Switch, it's one of the worst Pikmin games ever produced. It's one of the worst games I've ever seen come out of Nintendo. It's just one of the weird anomalies in this gaming industry that people don't want to talk about, because most people want to say the game is great because look at it, it's big and open and looks cool. You know, it's Pikmin, it's Pikmin, it's Pikmin. And I feel like people are letting their love for the franchise and the IP blind them to the reality that this game is a massive step down from 3 in every way imaginable. The level design isn't as good. The visuals aren't as good. The story makes no sense. And everything it does well is bogged down by just all this weird padding and just nonsense. For the record, this is actually the first time I've played the game since the major update that dropped, that introduced New Game Plus and introduced the higher difficulty levels. And that's actually what I did immediately, was like go immediately to the highest difficulty setting, because one of my problems with this game when it first came out was how brain dead simple the concept of the combat was. It really did feel like all of the enemies just kind of stood around and waited for you to like slam the dog into them and for you to like unleash the Pikmin and like insta kill them. It was embarrassing. There was no thought put into the combat at all. Like when you play the original or you play 3, like you get this sense that they actually put a lot of thought into the enemy AI, how the characters behave, like, and it actually feels like you're involved and you're doing things. Like in Pikmin 4, they trivialized all of it and made it into a complete joke. Even with the update, even with the new features, like this game is still a complete travesty. It's so bad that even coming back to it a couple of years later, you know, I went through this arc where it's like, oh yeah, the game's not as bad as I remember it. And then I started doing things and I started interacting with the environment and I started like realizing like why I hated the game to begin with. And it all just comes rushing back. It all just becomes like, how can anybody like this? It is just insane to me how so many people will seriously try and tell you this is one of the best games on Switch 1. That so many people will seriously try and tell you that this was like a glorious return to form for Pikmin, that it was like, you know, this huge success story. Like, I find it so strange how like the community downplayed something like say Yoshi in the Crafted World or ARMS, you know, genuinely well-made, good Nintendo Switch 1 games, while this got endlessly glazed and praised by the Muppets in the community. Like, this game got all this hype and all this attention and all this praise simply for being a Pikmin game, and it really did fail to stick the landing. But what was interesting to me about this, you know, looking at this game, going back to it, experiencing it again, doesn't it feel quite a bit like Bonanza or the new Star Fox, where like it's an unnecessary franchise reboot that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, where it kind of contradicts like pre-established lore? It kind of like completely ruins the style and tone of like the older games. Like Pikmin 4, I think, is the worst example of that we've seen so far, because I don't understand why they thought it was a good idea to give you a dog and make it like more useful than the Pikmin. I could understand if they had the dog in there and like, you know, had it to like, I don't know, do certain things or like do certain behaviors. But the simple fact of the matter is like, oh, the dogs are better than like the actual Pikmin. And it's just weirdly unbalanced and makes no sense. And it's so frustrating because I like the mechanics behind Oatchi. I like him as a character. I like all the things he can do for you. But it's like, it doesn't feel like a Pikmin game. Like, it feels like It's an Oatchi game, honestly. Like Oatchi completely ruins the experience so thoroughly that like the Pikmin themselves seem superfluous. Like you don't have to take care of them. You don't have to worry about them at all. Like all you have to do is just get on Oatchi and then start marching around and like just collecting the things. Like maybe you'll use Pikmin to carry things back to the ships when like you have Oatchi doing something else, but like that's it. Like the simple fact of the matter is this game has this really weird progression that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Like this game just doesn't do a good job of using the actual Pikmin in an interesting way. Like it just feels like a massive step down from what came before. And it's really frustrating because there's so many things about this game that I like. You know, I went back to like I believe a couple of the older areas. I don't think I went to all of them, but like, you know, I went back to like the areas and it kind of dawned on me like, you know, how wide open they are, how much there is to do, like how many interesting things there are in the areas, right? You know, I was on the beach and the tide goes down around noon and it just kind of blew my mind that like, wow, that's a really cool, interesting feature. But like, because of the way the game is designed, it doesn't really lead to a lot of interesting scenarios. Like because of the way the game is designed, like your Pikmin are just going to go to like the nearest base. They're going to stay there. And like, it's always going to be like wherever you're like busy working. So like, again, the tide going down it doesn't do anything for like speed running possibilities. It doesn't really like open anything. Like the game is too open. The game is too big. Like it feels like this game would have worked better if it was a smaller, more condensed area like Pikmin 1 or 3. And in fact, like that's kind of my thought process when going into like where it all went wrong. Like, why isn't this game more like the far superior Pikmin 1 or 3 with their great bosses, with their great environments, with like, you know, the cool optional content, right? That's baked into the open world. None of this stupid cave stuff. Pikmin 4 at its core is an extremely casualized product that really misses the point of what made Pikmin 1 and 3 great. And what's so disappointing about this to me, and the thing that really makes me afraid for the future of the franchise, is just how many people are so adamant that this was a great direction for the series to take. People aren't acknowledging the criticisms of the structure or the pacing or the content. Like, all anybody cares about is that, like, it's a Pikmin game and that it sold a lot and that, like, we're going to get more Pikmin games because of it. And they're not really thinking about the direction the series is taking. They're not thinking about like how the series has kind of lost its original charm and how it's not really evolving with the times in a way that really makes a whole lot of sense. For me personally, Pikmin is something that needed to be more strategic. You know, Pikmin is something that like really should have had you like multitasking, doing things with Pikmin all over the map at once, right? You know, that's the direction the series should have been. You know, I came up with this concept a while back. Like, you know, do we even really need the captains? Like, the captains feel like this huge boat anchor around the setting and around the Pikmin as a whole. Like, you know, I would much rather see the Pikmin in like their natural habitat, like doing things and like, you know, fighting things of their own volition. Do we really need captains? Like, I just don't understand like what the captains other than Olimar really bring to the franchise. Pikmin 4 doubled down on all of the things I did not want to see going forward out of the brand. You know, it has all this emphasis on a bunch of useless NPCs. It has a bunch of like, you know, open areas with nothing in them. The combat is casualized. Like, there really is at its core like very little to like about this game as a whole. Like, it's better than Pikmin 2, but that's not really saying much considering Pikmin 2 is like one of the worst Nintendo games ever made. Like, again, it's so frustrating, you know, seeing something like this get produced and not really seeing a whole lot of people speaking up about like what a disaster it actually was and what it might actually mean for the long-term history of the franchise. To me, this reminds me a lot of Star Fox Assault, right? You know, because at the time, you know, Star Fox Assault it kind of established this idea that Star Fox should be something specific, that it should be a third-person shooter, that it should have a serious plot, that it should, like, you know, try and have original antagonists. And all of that was something that, like, overall, like, severely impacted the long-term success of the brand. Like, Star Fox Assault was quite a bit more successful than Adventures or Assault, nowhere near a 64. But, like, you know, for a long time, Assault was seen as, like, the golden child of, like, the post 64 Star Fox era, and it was just a massive reason why the series couldn't grow or evolve, because so many people were hung up on this idea that Assault was the direction that the series should take, when in reality, it was just kind of the closest thing we had gotten to a traditional Star Fox since 64. That's kind of how I feel about Pikmin 4, is that it sold a lot, it was successful, it's popular, but not because it was a good game, but because it was a heavily casualized game that brought a lot of new people in and kind of just refused to evolve the game in any meaningful capacity, right? It's a dumbed down, casualized version of the IP, and it's not something that, like, I think we should give any respect or attention to. This is absolutely one of the worst games on Nintendo Switch 1 and really should be considered a massive disappointment by the audience at large.